Look at that. We have a video podcast, first ever. And Mr. Ric Phillips is our first ever video digBiz
Mhm.
podcast guest, which is quite exciting. There will be an audio version of this for those of you not of the video persuasion, but that is fine. Either way you take it is good by us. But anyway, this is exciting. Glad to have you, Ric. Welcome to digBiz.
Thank you. I guess video did kill the radio star.
You just dated yourself. Boom, boom.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you got it. So
I
you
got
also
it.
did
I got it.
yourself.
I just dated myself too. All right. Who is Ric? So Ric Phillips. I'm going to read this. So you're going to see me reading. Ric
Mhm.
Phillips is an executive communication coach, corporate trainer focused on sharing concepts to help anyone communicate simply, clearly, and confidently. He's the creator of 3V Communications, a company that uses a holistic system to synchronize and sharpen interpersonal and professional communication skills. His background includes a BA in sociology, psychology, and currently is working on his MBA. He has certifications in teaching English as a second language, body language, analysis, coaching, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And he is a frequent conference speaker, and he does have a TEDx speaker appearance, which is exciting. That was great. You should do another one. That worked well.
Thank you.
Ric is an expert in communications, public speaking techniques, and body language analysis, frequently called upon the media to provide pundit opinion and advice on business people, politicians, and celebrities, including a couple just recently. Right? A couple of
Yeah,
political things. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there was the Trump handshake, of course,
Oh,
when he
that's
was
right.
all crazy. That was really fun.
That's right.
And there were politicians like the Ford brothers, and elections come up that get
Yeah.
called. So there's Trudeau, et cetera. There's different calls along the way. I try not to do it too much, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's enticing.
Oh, it's good for a giggle.
Yeah, it's good for a giggle.
In 2016, Ric also became the executive director of the National Communication Coaching Association of Canada, otherwise known as NCCA. Officially, welcome, Mr. Ric Phillips, to digBiz.
Thank you, and thank you for reading all that stuff. Appreciate it.
It's good because honestly, I forget. Even if I read it once, I forget 20-30%, and the details always help. But in particular, why Ric is here is that we've got a series on customer experience that we've been working on, and we have blog articles recently out called "Customer Experience Needs to Come from Every Corner of Your Business." And who better to bring on for customer experience wisdom and insight, and how that applies at the human level and then out through the digital world, which is of course why we're here, and how that's working and how it's not working. So let's dive in a little bit. I'm just going to pull up a few notes. And why don't we start with how do you see customer experience in the relationship between bricks and mortar and digital? How do you see that in the world right now?
Well, a couple of things stand out. One is people always want to deal with people, even if you can't. And two, social media allows people to be jerks. And in the old days, it was much harder to vent and to deliver vitriol, because you might get punched in the face, you might get a door slammed in your face, you might get the phone slammed down on you. But online, everybody can say what they want, and apparently they do. So those are the two things that stick out with the online world in terms of customer service or customer dissatisfaction.
And even in that, so sorry to jump in, but you really touch on something, because you're coming, your comment is largely about the customer side of it. Mm-hmm. And are you basically saying that the digital world is, as you said, being jerks, but they're being jerks because there's effectively no retribution? It's like you don't have to look a human in the face when they're upset, hurt, or crying or angry. That part of the human accountability is just gone. Mostly.
Yeah, retribution, accountability, responsibility for your words. These are kind of old ideas now, perhaps, but the feelings exist. The feelings exist that we do want people to be responsible for the words. We do want people to respond to us. So if I'm upset as a customer and I'm willing to call, I want to talk to a human. Right? Or so if a chat's available, a chat bot, I might give it a shot because maybe the wait time is too long, which is also a problem, of course. Then I go to the chat bot. And the most famous thing that happens with chat bots across the plane is the wait time. It says, "Hi, can I help you? Do you have a question?" And you type in your question, and you wait a really long time before you get a response. And that response might be intuitive and accurate, or it might be a generic template. Then you're like, "Oh, okay. So this really isn't a person on the other end of the line." So if someone's going to use AI, it's got to be pretty high level to kind of, I don't want to say fool people, but at least make them comfortable.
Yep.
And it's got to be faster, or else people get frustrated. They know, okay, this is not a person. If it is a person, what's the difference between waiting on the phone or, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
So that when someone's upset, which is obviously when they do call to complain or type to complain, is when they're already upset, that just adds fuel to the fire, that wait.
Right. And in a sort of a pre-AI world, there's been a rash of, and this is usually at the enterprise level, of supposedly very sophisticated phone systems. So that was kind of the first version of it. And you call, and it wants you to tell it what your problems are.
Right.
And what went wrong with that?
It's a good idea. And I think people are used to that now. Like you said, you call in, it says, okay, what's your account number? Please key it in or say it. So it gives you the options, which is good, because if there is an issue with speech recognition, that's a frustration for everyone, right? But obviously the customer is reading out their number, or they're explaining something, and then when the robot comes back and says, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand," it's like, once again, the frustration rises. So the systems are not really that bad as long as they work well, right? And then is the onus on the speaker to be a really clear speaker. Like, that almost borders on racism to some degree if you're dealing with English or French in Canada and someone doesn't speak English or French as a first language. So there's issues there too. How good is the software to recognize accents?
Yep. Now, there was actually a gag about that, with a voice prompted elevator in Scotland. And these two Scottish guys get up, and of course they make fun of the fact that they had the first voice activated elevator is in Scotland, and of course they're doing this, trying to say 11 without a Scottish accent. Of course, hilarity ensues, right. And they never get out of the elevator, basically.
Right. Right. And there's always truth in humor, isn't there?
Well, yeah, and they were shaking fists, screaming all sorts of political things. Eventually, it was very fun. But so speech systems have improved.
Mm-hmm.
That's the technology side of it. So, okay, maybe we're a little bit better about taking phone numbers and putting, I lost my cat to the right department. But is the customer experience better? I mean, okay, we brought down the temperature, but that doesn't fix everything.
No, so when we look at big picture of humans, how do humans act when they're under stress? How do humans act when they're upset? That's the key. So if you have an engineer, let's use just a general term, creating a system, whether it's an IT engineer, whether it's a phone systems engineer, when they're creating a system, they're thinking about it probably in terms of what works, what doesn't, how do I connect them? How do I do this and that? And the customer doesn't care about all that stuff, right? They just want to have their communication. If it's not with a person, okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you some patience. If it's not with a person, I'll deal with your robot first. But then it better be a good interaction and a clear interaction. So the temperature that you mentioned before is very, very important. Remember, when someone's calm, this is obviously a little bit easier. They have more patience. If they're in a Zen state, you have a little bit more patience. But if you're upset, which would prompt the call in the first place, or the typing of the email or the chat, that's when you have less patience. So that's why the AI or whatever technology you're going to use has to be smooth, fast, intuitive.
Yep.
If it's not, the delay just increases that level of impatience and reaction. And then when they finally do press 0 100 times to get to a real person, they just blast them.
So here's a human psychology question for you, because I've heard versions of answers to this. Do you feel that a human who is at some level of frustration, they need to be heard, them getting an immediate response from a bot that is not really accurate and kind of steers them in the right direction and is clearly not understanding, is that worse than a more generic response to say, effectively, we see that you're here and we are, for all intents and purposes, giving you to a human that will respond as soon as possible. In other words, mitigating the risk of a bad interaction by saying, wait a little bit longer, and your particular query needs to go to someone who can effectively communicate directly. Do you think it's better for the human to be put off to a more accurate experience?
That's a really great question. And I'm tempted to say, towards the latter. But what I want to do is give a bigger answer and say, when people are in trouble, quote unquote, under stress, frustrated, want to complain, need to be heard, as you very correctly said, they have their initial contact, whether face-to-face, phone, email, text, whatever it is. The initial contact is blah, 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 right? It's I'm upset, or I've got to say something, or here's my account number, or whatever it is. The initial response coming back to them can be filed under two categories: helper or hurter, right? Ally or enemy, whichever language you want to use. Remember, that's the key, my friend. That's the key. Whatever that first interaction is, if it's a bot, it's a bot. That's fine. If it's a recording, it's a recording. But does it give me the feeling as the customer that this system is going to help me? Yep. Then I can start calming down. I'll wait 5 minutes if I have the feeling that the 5 minutes is going to be productive and fruitful. Or does the feeling I get from that message or that AI bot or whatever it might be give me the feeling that this is not going to be helpful? As a matter of fact, this is going to slow me down. It's going to create things I've got to jump over. That's the problem, right? So again, this goes back to an engineer, and I'm not trying to make fun of them. I love them, but sometimes they just create things in terms of what system might work and whatnot. You need the human to come in and say, okay, from a customer experience, here's what they might feel when they get that response. Here's what they might feel when they get this. So that's what I would say, right? And I think you're the same. If someone, whether a real person or not, says, we want to help you, we want to deal with this, maximum you're going to wait 5 minutes, we're going to catch you the right person, that's much better of a feeling. It calms you down because you're like, okay, the next person I talk to is going to help me, right? As opposed to enter your account number, enter your address, enter your last 4 digits of this, right? And then it's this continuous thing. Okay, please wait. We have a really slow day today. Crazy music. And then, okay, please remember, we've got a sale coming on next week, right? Like all that stuff. It's because the feeling is they're not going to help me. It's going to be an obstacle or hurt me.
So businesses that are dealing with all the touch points communication, which we've been talking about phone and bot largely, but whether it's phone, bot, or ticket type of system, email ticket thing, businesses need they need a customer advocate in-house, probably that is essentially coming deliberately passively as a customer to say, I'm coming in here, I know nothing about your system, and I need to not be ticked off by what I experience.
Right. The secret shopper, the ombudsman, whatever it might be, someone to test the system. And when you look at companies that are, famous for having really great customer service, they do this type of behavior, right? They always test it from a entry-level human perspective.
Yeah. There was once a study that at a big bank that I sort of learned about secondhand, and quite some time ago, they were trying to use surveys and metrics to figure out ways to improve those metrics on customer satisfaction. And they spun around a couple of different options, and they ultimately came down to one thing. They were measuring the number of times a human needed to phone them. At the time, it was phone mostly.
Right.
Needed to phone them. And the logic was this, and I wanted to ask you what you thought of this. The logic was, if someone has decided that they need to call into the bank, then we have not done enough of a job in reaching out to them. So, of course, the premise being that they've reached out either by rep, by marketing, by communication. If they've sort of brought out or they've addressed the desire for new or better service in advance of that person calling and saying, I need a service. I need some service in this area. And so they took that to say, look, we have to be more affirmative. And that was their metric. And how do you feel about that?
It's debatable. I think that metrics can be used to say whatever you want to say. I think that, again, going back to the feeling. So let's say, a very common thing for customer service, let's say I have a problem with something like Apple or Gmail or something. I go to my search and I say, how do I, fix my emails going to spam, whatever it might be, or how do I, put my link, sync my music, etc. And then what happens, you get to a page that has quite a bunch of suggestions, like separate blog posts, right?
Yeah.
So my feeling as a customer, I don't feel bad about that, right? Because it's not like I'm going to a page that doesn't give me anything, or it's the completely wrong, but the company's trying. They're saying, here's a bunch of things that may help you with your problem before you call us.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of this is really great. The feeling is because you might actually find your solution there, which saves you time from calling to the company.
When it works,
right?
when it works, it's
Yeah.
brilliant. It's a lot of gratitude. Yeah.
And the feeling is the company's trying, right? They're putting all these posts by these experts or whatever it might be, or videos, help tutorials, whatever it might be. And the feeling is, okay, this is a good. So if I do have to go and call that company anyway, my feeling, right, going in, my temperature, as we were talking about the temperature, is not as hot as before, right? I'm like, okay, I know they're trying, and it wasn't quite that. I just got to talk to somebody quickly to make sure, I know how to fix this problem. Right. So all these things can be very, very helpful to the focus is people don't call in unless they're at a certain point, right? And then when they are at that point, even if they have a calm voice, inside they're stressed, or they're under pressure, or there's a time crunch of some kind, or there's something. And so the idea with humans is very simple. So as our emotions go up, our logic and rationale go down. And it kind of goes like this. It's like, well, like Mr. Spock and McCoy from Star Trek were perfect, kind of opposites of each other, and Kirk was in the middle, but it's kind of the same thing, right? When you're really stressed out and frustrated, you can't think really logically and rationally.
Yeah.
Right. So there's got to be this sensitivity when companies are developing customer service, customer experience, and especially when it comes to a non-human.
Yep. So how do you feel then about the side of customer service that it's largely informational? So I'm thinking of things like ordering processes and such, where an obvious one is a commerce, an online purchase. Right. Someone goes in and they've bought 10 shirts, and at that moment, as far as you're concerned, those 10 shirts they're done. I bought my 10 shirts. Right. Credit card, you see the approval, all the normal stuff happened in real time, done. And lo and behold, one of those shirts proves to be unavailable. So we have a disconnect. So on one hand, from a technical point of view, I'm going to throw out there and say, well, that should never have happened, except for very, very extreme circumstances, like the shirt was there, but it was damaged and they didn't know. So setting that aside, the shirt just simply wasn't there. The data was wrong. So what's your experience with people's levels of frustration ordering these kinds of non-real-time events, and how this incongruity of data, what does that do to people now? Because this is now new. I bought something, but wait a minute, I didn't.
Right. It's another good question. So the question that the company might ask themselves is, do we want to give the customer a bunch of information, or streamline it to a simple kind of yes or no? And that's the question they ask themselves. So if a company says, I don't want to, bother them with all this of what happened in the storeroom and all that stuff, I'm just going to tell them, 9 out of 10 are coming on Tuesday, one was not available. So that seems like a good answer, doesn't it? But actually, no, because you go back to the human. Humans hate not knowing. And we get frustrated. And what we'll do is we'll make up the answer for you if you don't tell us. So we ordered the 10 shirts. We get an email saying 9 are coming, and there's no real definition of what happened to the 10th one. We get upset. We start thinking to ourselves, maybe I pressed the wrong information myself. Maybe they didn't get that. Maybe I've got it. Can I go back and check that order? Maybe it's damaged or something, but how do I know? Will they reorder it for me? Do I have to order it again? Should I go back? So this is the problem. Now, the company, thinking that it's streamlining things to keep it simplified for the customer, does the opposite. The customer gets more frustrated because the questions are there. So it's better to take the time in that email and say, like, hi, Jason, we regret to inform you we're able to send 9 out of 10. It'll be there for Tuesday. The last one, unfortunately, was damaged. We can't send it out. Apologies. Here's a discount code for next time, or we can reorder it if you like. Yeah. That's customer service, right? Yeah. That's caring about the customer, not just, well, this is our company, this is our process, this is what happened in the stock room, deal with it. It's the opposite. It's like, you have no control over what just happened over here at our company. We feel bad. We want to give you something, or give you some explanation, or give you some options. That's customer service. That's what the good customer service companies do.
And therefore, to your earlier point, by effectively coming clean, there's a transparency there. And you don't have to, we don't have to go into why the shirt was damaged. I mean, at some point that's too much. There is too much. But ultimately you are more or less coming clean by saying, it was supposed to be there, but it wasn't. We can't do it. And then as you pointed out, the what to do about it. If you don't do that, if you say something very, very vague and possibly even nonsensical, they're going to make stuff up, including you're incompetent and I'm never shopping here again.
Right. Which might not be true, right? It could have been something that there was nothing to do with incompetence. Exactly right. So people feel it. So I want everybody just to understand this, because because I am coming at it from a very human point of view. What do I mean by all this stuff I'm saying? So let's say you and your friend are walking in a starry night and you see a bright light in the sky, which doesn't look normal. The question is, what is it? And the answer is something. And what I mean by that, there's no human listening to this podcast right now, no human that actually says, I don't know, and mean it. So the brain hates a mystery. And I can say this 300 times. The brain hates a mystery. The brain will fill it in. You will think to yourself, it's a star, or it's a planet, or it's Venus, or it's an airplane, or it's a UFO. But you will actually fill it in. Like you actually don't really believe when you say, I don't know what that is. You may not be certain, but your brain actually has an assumption.
Yeah.
So this is the challenge with humans, is that if we don't have the data, we fill it in for you. And here's the problem. We have a negative slant, a cynical slant to it. And that's also the problem, right? So when it comes to the alien, if you're kind of like weird, but it's an alien, like or something like that. But if it's a customer service experience, like, well, they messed up. The feeling is a cynical view of they must have screwed up. They must not have good customer service. I'm not going to get that package in time. That's the problem with humans, and that's what sometimes people don't understand. We don't assume the positive answer. We assume the negative answer until proven otherwise.
That brain of ours.
That brain of ours.
Yeah. Moral of the story: do everything you can to not have incongruent data. Exactly. Align your data as much as you can. And I'm putting in just a little digital plug for the crowd out there. That if those 10 shirts are available, as we said in the beginning of this, like 99.9 times out of 100, it really should be. And the only excuse should be an extraordinary damage situation. Just pure data, data misalignment and stuff. We don't know where the warehouse is, and this store took that store, and right. Dave walked away. Like these aren't excuses. We're done with that. We've been done with that for decades.
And if something does happen, right, where there is an issue, then again, it's don't make the customer wait for a long time to find out what the result is, right?
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts, and this is from our article, and I'd love to hear you about this. We talked about the walking the customer walk. So let's talk about the culture now, the business culture of our listeners, right people. You have a staff, 2 people, 200 people around you. Mm-hmm. What's the culture? How do you see the best cultures grown out? You don't just hire someone and say, be nice to your customers. It obviously doesn't work that way. So what are these cultures? How do they get there?
Yeah. So if we're talking about customer experience, right, and if we're talking about technical customer experience, then
we're talking everything. We're talking the strategy and then out, because at some point someone has to say, we have to respond within 24 hours. Is that the benchmark? Is it 4 hours? Yeah. Is it 48? Yeah. Is it is junior person? Is it a senior person?
Yeah, no, great question. And so when in doubt, let's look at who's doing it right. Like, so let's say there's an entrepreneur out there who's starting their own company. They're kind of growing it a bit. They're not a professional customer service, experienced personnel by trade. Okay. Yes, there's books, there's workshops, there's training, there's coaching, there's all that stuff. And there's role modeling, right? There's mentoring, there's role modeling. There's looking at what, again, ask yourself as a human, what do I like to do in terms of my when I'm ordering something, what's a great experience for me? When I receive some feedback from the bank or the company, and it was really great and really positive, like, I'm going to make a mental note of that, because now I'm thinking like a CEO, and I'm going to make that a note. So I used to do this myself, by the way, in the old days of running my company. In the beginning, if I got like a really good, like a customer service letter of some kind that I thought was a really good template, I would take it, because obviously some big companies spent a lot of money finding out what is a good way to word these rejection letters or these, whatever it might be. But nevertheless, I would take those aside. Well, this is really great. I really liked how they made me feel in this, or I like the language. So there are examples around outside of your own intuitiveness of how you like to be treated as a customer when you're dealing with things. Once everything's top down, right? People like to pretend it's not, but it is. It really is, right? Even a flat organization, it's top down. So it's really up to the upper echelons to really decide how they want to deal with customer service. Is it, you handle the easy stuff, all the difficult stuff comes to me? Or is it, we're going to give it to Jane because she's an expert at that because of ABC reason? But there's got to be a strategy.
Yep.
It can't just be like, well, I didn't know wasn't supposed to answer the phone. And the other problem is the bosses have to be pretty clear with any staff at any level. What is their progression of handling dissatisfied customers, right? Whether it's social media or otherwise, because otherwise they don't know. Are they supposed to turn it over to somebody, or are they allowed to run with it because that's the responsibility? And then if that's okay, then they can't get the boss, breathing down their neck afterwards. If you've told them you're the social media manager, you deal with our social media, then you can train them afterwards, but you can't give them trouble if you're going to give them that freedom, right?
Well,
so
and
it's got to be clear.
There's an accountability between the management C-suite and people who may be entry level, maybe their first job, and they're just getting used to it, by laying out, as underpinning rules of the culture, by laying out the expectations, as you said, then you can't really fault someone for following them. And then now agility wise though, this is going to change. I mean, it already just changed in the past 2 years for some reason. I have no idea why. So it changes. It changes sometimes very quickly, and sometimes it just moves along as humans tend to change. So that's going to evolve this too.
Yes, for sure. And so now the customer service training has to include the technology side too, right? It has to. We thought social media was the big thing. Okay, that's passé almost, right? I mean, it's like, how are chatbots and AI technology, and who's managing that? Not the company come and install the software, but okay, who's managing it? Who's reviewing it? Who's in charge of it at the company? So there are these bigger questions that go with the overall vision of how do we deal with customers.
Right. Now, in terms of, sorry, I'm looking through. So the team is handling customer service on a sort of almost a hub and spoke kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about customer experiences that are separate? So, for example, you go to a chatbot, as we talked about in the beginning, and you end up in a conversation with Steve the chatbot. And as it turns out, Steve's a human. You've been passed off to Steve the human. Great. So you put in your thing, Steve, my such and such won't work. I tried to turn it on, and you spend 15 minutes and he gives you a few tips.
Right.
So you go away, you come back 2 hours later, you don't feel like doing with the bot, and then you end up phoning someone. Back to our phone conversation.
Right.
Should the person you talk to on the phone know that you have had this conversation with Steve?
Should, yes. Will they? 20% chance?
The number of times in the past, and this is getting better, but the number of times in the past where I have had person number one, and the situation is complex enough that there is a story to work through. And then, it turns out I'm not the right person. And then off you go to person number two. Person number two doesn't have a clue what just happened, aside from the fact that it has obviously been escalated diagonally upwards. This can't be good.
No, and it's so simple. Even old school is like you have notes, right? A long time ago, I worked customer service in Mississauga. A long time ago, a financial company, and it was old school technology, but we couldn't erase our notes. So when we were talking to someone with the headset and we were, typing in our notes about what was going on, after you reached the line and it reset, you couldn't delete it. Okay. You couldn't delete it, right? So it was this way, like, obviously you have to be careful what you say, keep it short and clear, but you put your notes in. And then if that person was transferred, or if, let's say, they hung up and called back and somebody else got it, when they looked at the file number, they saw my notes because they were permanently there. It's old technology. That was a long time ago, but that's very, very effective to making sure that everyone knows the most recent interaction and what was promised or what was suggested. Absolutely. You have to have some sense of this.
And a degree of accountability. Where you, I don't know the timing, but you're you're making your notes, and at some point in time, we can't just randomly start changing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
After it's done, it's like, no, this is what was said. There's no unlocking this.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's proof. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is, there's an accountability to that, and it may be inconvenient sometimes. In fact, it probably is. I'm sure there's once a day someone would say, "Oh, geez, I really shouldn't have written that."
Yeah, it was at first. It took a little bit to get used to, but then afterwards, I realized the why they did that, and it was good. It keeps you on your toes, but also keeps your notes short and sweet and non emotional, right? Which is also the point. You report the behavior of the situation, not the attitudes, not the personalities. That's also very important to keep your notes succinct, so that when someone else gets them, the chatbot, Steve, or whoever it might be, there's not this emotional overlay that clouds their judgment or gives them some sense of this primacy effect, which is a negative. You don't want that either.
Yeah, try and do the logic thing. Try and keep it to the facts. Stick to the facts. Yeah,
stick to the facts. Just the facts, man.
So probably our last sort of summary thing that we always look at are especially these days have been what we define as points of truth, or sometimes touch points. Some people would call them, and we say points of truth because they're often factual data. And we touched on it with the inventory of the 10th shirt that didn't make it.
Right.
And we've got a place now where the points of truth, or people's perceptions of points of truth, i.e., do you have that shirt, that 10th shirt, yes or no? Do you have that shirt at that store, yes or no? Sometimes you get that. Is my package on time to arrive on Monday morning, and so on and so on. So there are various points of truth now that used to be just sort of out there. And we never really knew how it worked until eventually something would show up.
Right.
We're now at a point where almost all the time we can pull up our phone or computer and we can see exactly where the package is, exactly when our stuff is going to arrive. In some cases, when the delivery person is going to show up within a half an hour, and so on and so on. These are all points of truth. And some of these in fact, most of these points of truth are getting tighter and tighter and tighter in time requirements and accuracy. Mm-hmm. How do you see the value of companies like getting a hold of that as part of a critical part of defining their customer experience? If they don't get some of this stuff right, or at least know where the performance level is, for example, our inventory from such and such warehouse will only update once an hour. That's all we can do. Okay, well, is there a risk to customer experience with that? So how do you see that process? Are businesses just not asking those questions, or some are and some aren't?
Yeah, a couple thoughts on that. The first thing is we go back to the idea that humans don't want to not know what's going on, right? We don't want to know it's going to be there in 2 to 5 days. We don't want to know it's going to be there. And one of the things we hate is your item will be delivered from, on Thursday from 9 to 5, right? So taking a country like Japan, just for example, this is not something new where you can book your delivery time within an hour. And this is not with the specialty services like a FedEx. This is with the local post office. They're going to deliver something. You could book it within an hour. And this has been going on for 10 plus years. So there are systems out there or cultures out there that are more advanced in terms, and Japan, to be fair, is quite famous for being customer service oriented, quite highly. But that's something we can look at and say, well, what can we do within the realm of our capabilities to understand, first of all, why are they doing that? Well, it's because the customer experience is okay. So let's see what we can do there. Can we shorten these windows? What if I'm using a third-party carrier? Maybe the Amazon quality service is fantastic, but then it goes to the delivery service company and they're bad, right? Maybe my bad experience is at the tail end because it was one of these situations where I was home, nobody rang up, the item says they tried to deliver it, they didn't. So now I'm mad at the company that I ordered it from, or the person ordered it from, but actually it wasn't their fault. It was the delivery service, whether it was the Canada Post or whether it was, that's the other thing. How do you deal with that? And will you deal with that as a company? Will you choose your carriers? Will you collect feedback on the customers, which carriers they've had good experiences with and which ones they haven't?
Right. And
there's things we can do.
There's things we can do. Recently, I had to rent a car. Unfortunately, our car had gotten hit while parked. And through the insurance process, they said I think they sent a link, and click this link, and then you go and you pick your rental car for the time period. I said, okay, neat. So I clicked on the link, and sure enough, I go to the rental car company landing page, and this landing page had clearly been set up for this insurance company purposes. Also fine. It's like, wow, this all makes sense. So my customer experience journey was quite good at this point. And then the tool that they had said, pick your class of car. So there was that. So it's okay. I'll pick that class of car, and then when do you want to have it? Monday, Tuesday, whatever. And do you want to be picked up? Right. So the tool went through all this stuff. I'm saying, well, yes, I would like to get picked up. Thank you very much.
Right.
And so I chose the thing, and you will be picked up at 11. I remember this 11:30 on such and such morning. Awesome. This is very cool. Got the confirmation email back. And so the day comes, and I make sure that I rearrange my days so I'd be all ready to go. And 5 minutes before 11:30, so 11:25, I get a call from the car company. Okay, maybe they're here already. So picked up. No, they had no idea that this had happened. Some guy in the company had given them my name saying, oh, you have to call them.
Right.
Everything I did in that wonderful tool was absolute zero.
Yeah, out the window.
And then the guy said to me, and I'd forgotten the story. You're reminding me now about this rant. Then the guy said to me on the phone, and I told him, I said, well, I'm actually here waiting to be picked up because your system said I'm going to be picked up.
Right.
And then he said to me, and the poor guy was probably 19 and a half years old. He said, but I'm all alone. To which the devil on my shoulder popped up and said, I don't care. I did
me.
The tool said you're picking me up. Anyway, it went from there, but this is very recent. These are amazing systems that were built. And the culture and it becoming part of the workflow was zero.
Yeah.
They barely knew this thing even existed.
We are coming along in technology, and they're like, it's a standard now. You're talking about Uber and stuff when you can see the driver coming. It's becoming a standard, right? When we do want to know where the vehicle is, where the driver is, et cetera, for those types of services.
And fleet logistics are becoming faster, and 5G is making it even better, and so on.
So these are good, right? And they're filling out the system so that I'm going to get a benefit from that, right? So the benefit is I'm going to get picked up at 11:30. That's great too. It's obviously what happened was a disconnect, but so we're getting more comfortable with it. We're getting more comfortable being online. We're getting more comfortable with systems, right? AI systems or chatbots. We are getting more comfortable, but we give up pretty quickly. A, if we're already frustrated at the time or stressed out of some kind, and B, if there's a significant wait time, what we consider to be a significant wait time. And again, your patience are even shorter when you're upset. And then C, if it doesn't make sense, if it's nonsensical. Those are three things to pay attention to.
Perfect. Yeah. And the one thing that I said after that experience with this rental car company, I said to everyone who would listen, I said, they just didn't have to promise me that. They could have said, we will contact you by Monday end of day or sometime that's reasonable, and we will make arrangements. I would have been completely fine with that. But so there's this place where one, I mean, it really seemed like a one arm had no idea what the other arm was doing, and the culture just completely, it never transferred. So make sure the culture embraces everything.
Yeah, and if someone from that company does approach you, in theory, and says something like, "Oh, really sorry about that. We had this back end issue where it wasn't connected to ABC." That's when the customer doesn't care about that. What they do want to know is what are you going to do now about it, right? Is there an apology? Is there some sort of like what kind of? So it's okay to to learn, right? To try these things and learn how to integrate them, but how do we deal with the customer after that happens, right?
Yeah. And just for the record, I did tell them, and I was put on to a head office that said, "Oh, we'd like to pass you on so that because we want to improve systems, and we're going to have one of our upper level contact you."
Good.
Never did.
Man, that company's really bad at just like getting your hopes up.
Culture, people. Culture.
Yeah. Good point.
If you're gonna do it, do it. Yeah, if you're not, if you can't, then dial it back. But so some last thoughts. Businesses they've been digitally transforming for years. They're doing so faster than ever. It's out of the box now. What do they need to think about? What's that culture, digital and bricks and mortar that they need to think about?
That it's two-pronged approach, right? It's really cool technology and it's really cool humanology. That's the thing. You can't just hire really, really great technical people and engineers and do this brilliant software and then just assume that it works well because they tested it themselves, right? Or their friends did. You've got to have people who are really specialists in customer service or care or something. It could be university students who are studying sociology or something. It doesn't have to be hiring a big expensive company. But there's got to be that testing that goes through, and so they can see not just where the gaps might be, but how the response is. Right.
Yep.
And the second thing is to really pay attention to the temperature. We talked about that earlier, and it's really important that we talked about that, because when people are frustrated or upset, their rationale goes down, their patience goes down. These all affect the testing that's going on. So don't test the system under perfect conditions, right? You got to think to yourself, what if that person doesn't want to wait 2 minutes for a response?
Yeah.
Etc. Cool.
Wisdom, wise words. Thank you. This has been great. Thanks for taking the time on our first ever video podcast.
Thanks for having me,
Phillips. If people want to contact you regarding communication coaching services, the entrepreneurial Yeti, you can talk about that for just a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you look up communication coach, and you'll find me. Ric Phillips, RIC is how I spell it. That's an easy way to find me. On LinkedIn, of course. Twitter is @comcoach. So you can find me there. My company's called 3V Communications. You could also find me through there, again, the typical social media. Yeti is York Entrepreneurship Development Institute. It's a mouthful. We just call it Yeti. It's a charity in Canada that focuses on training entrepreneurs, both for-profit, non-profit, international, and local. And we've got several programs. It's a startup I've been involved with since 2013, proudly. And I do the business communication side of it, but there's a bunch of people together, education, training, helping people out. So if people are interested in the entrepreneurial journey, want to get some education, it is free for Canadians. Please do check out Yeti, yeti.ca.
Fantastic. And a disclaimer to everyone, I am actually a mentor for Yeti, so I'm aware of all this. So just a little transparency there. Anyway, thanks again, Ric. And we will put the communication details in the footer of the podcast as well, so that everyone who's listening can get it there. And thanks again. Thanks again for appearing on digBiz.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Right. Bye for now.
Cheers.